Welcome to episode 7 of the Mod Pod, the new podcast from Knees Up Mother Brown. I'm delighted to welcome the team back once again for another round of chat as we look at some of the latest events happening in and around West Ham United Football Club. There's been lots of things happening in the last week and we're going to discuss quite a few of them on the show tonight. First of all, I'd just like to say I'll introduce you, actually, first of all, to the panel who we have on tonight. DL back again. Good to see you, buddy. How are you?
All right. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all good, mate. You?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, very good. Good to see you again. How you doing, buddy?
Hi.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Chalks back in the on the Mod Pod for the first time.
Yeah, I'm back.
Quaffing some fine wine by the looks of things, there, buddy.
I've got half a bottle in one glass.
This could be interesting the longer this show goes on. Bristol Hammer, good to see you again, buddy. Good to have you back.
Hey, mate, you're right.
Very well, thanks, mate. And Rio, who shared the Aston Villa commentary at the weekend. Good to see you again, my friend.
Evening all.
And also, last but not least, we have a very special guest joining us on the show tonight. He will be someone who's very well known to West Ham United's regular away followers. He is the brains behind the Irons Supporting Foodbanks project, which has been raising funds and collecting consumables on behalf of the Beckton-based Gnome food bank since its launch last year. Living as he does in Cheshire, his matchday commute amounts to some 200 miles each way for home matches. And if that isn't a loyal supporter, then I don't know what is. I'd like to give a big charitable KUMB.com welcome to John Ratomski. How are you doing, John?
Thanks, Graham. Great, all good. Thanks. Hello, everyone.
All right.
Hello, mate.
Good to have you on the show, John. And in fact, we're going to start with you tonight, my friend. As I said there in your intro, you are the brains behind the Irons Supporting Foodbank scheme, which is something that's been in operation for since 2019, I believe. It started last year. For those who aren't aware, can you tell us exactly what it is you do and where you do it?
Well, we're really following in the footsteps of those who have done this for a few years before us. Obviously, the two Liverpool clubs have got together 5 years ago. They formed Fans Supporting Foodbanks, and they're relatively close to me. They give me ideas on what to do, and we can see their successes and see if we can do something similar as we develop and grow. When I first went to see them, it was 23 months ago when we played that opening game at Anfield when we lost 4-0 under Pellegrini, and they had the van there which was provided by local groups, and it was incredible to see the number of people and regulars coming along with donations, with bags. There were players there, ex-managers had turned up, Ian Rush had come along with bags and so on, and they had a lot of regulars turning up, and I thought, well, wow, it became a numbers game for me. And you know how what the state of Newham is these days, and as it was then, it was a numbers game. I thought, well, 60,000 coming to our stadium every home game, probably 45,000 walking past from Stratford to where we wanted to set up, and from that point, really, it was just getting permission from the various bodies to get a stand and recognition, and the club helped us, various bodies helped us, and we were able to set up at the last game of December against Leicester Reserves, I think it was.
So for those who don't know where you are, I mean, you're situated outside the stadium. You were given a special dispensation to collect, as I said, you collect money and also foodstuffs. Tell everyone exactly where it is they can find you. Usually on a match day.
We set up eventually. The post we wanted was next to the information porter cabin for the QE site. So it was the walkway from Stratford shopping centre to the stadium, and that's where we saw most people going. And at first, I approached the council and said, "Look, this is what we want to do," and they got very, very suspicious. And at one stage, they came back to me and said, "Well, we've got a few reservations here because we can see some people using cans as weapons." And you're thinking, okay, what, by the same guys who were buying popcorn and pick and mix inside the stadium? So eventually we got over that boundary, and the first group said, oh well, Newham said, well, where you want to be, that's not us. You've got to speak with Lend-Lease that have that location at Endeavour Square. So then it was a case of approaching them. I got nowhere with them. A very strange company to get hold of. They couldn't put me through to anybody without a name. I didn't have a name, and in the end got through them through a website inquiry. But when they got back to me, they said, "Oh well, where you want, actually, it's not us. It's LLDC." Because by this time, I reckoned that we should be by the information centre. It looked a great place and had lighting for night games and everything. So I got in touch with LLDC, and they were very supportive, and they came back and said, "Yeah, oh, really great, we want to support you, but we don't run the site on match days. You have to get permission from LS185. So that was another call and series of phone calls and so on. And eventually they came on board. They're the ones that run the security on the site on match days. And we had a conference call, and basically all we had to do was to do a health and safety assessment that they and the council were happy with. And they said, okay, we'll give you a trial go. And that was the Leicester game. And after that, they came along and said, yeah, subject to the opposition, if it's a high risk match, we may not allow you to collect, but you're okay for the rest of the season. And I think we had 6 games in total before lockdown in March. And it grew because people could see us, you know, every game they knew where we were in good position. And we started to attract regular donors as well. You know, some of the fans would come with bags full. You'd see them there the next game, and the group supported us as well. Pride of Irons would come along, make donations, and we were just starting to build up that head of steam until obviously lockdown, and that affected us obviously with nothing on match day.
Yeah, I was going to come to that actually, John. It's obviously been made a huge impact on what you can contribute to the food banks. How much has it affected you, and sort of how much, I guess, have you lost? If you were to put it in a percentage terms, how much would you say, you know, what you've been able to generate as
Well, what we'll always lose was you on match days when you were collecting with us, because you've got that East End market trader voice.
Yeah,
so you could get a
thing.
captive evident audience when you were there. So that was good on the times that you came to help us. I've got to thank you for that. But on average, we were collecting between 600 and 700 quid's worth of food and cash. And that's how it went. I mean, it spiked and dropped. Certainly the West Brom game, you could see that everyone coming to the stadium, most of them were tourists who didn't know what it was about. The Liverpool game, people coming in straight from work. So again, it's a different kind of supporter. But overall, you know, you had Brighton where, you know, we even had guys from Brighton who came to the game and said, look, we've got no food bank at Brighton and Hove, but we'll bring something to you. So they came along with a bag. Everton made a donation when they came. Liverpool did the same thing. They made a donation. So, you know, it's a good feel-good factor where you've got clubs who have got similar food bank setups that we exchange information. We'll make donations when we go to Newcastle, the Manchester clubs, the Liverpool clubs. I think Burnley have got their own food bank too. Now Aston Villa have got one. So, you know, as things develop and we move on in more of a safe atmosphere, we might start up again to some degree. But to answer your question, David Sullivan became aware of the shortfall for the last 5 games, and you know, I said to him, look, you know, £700 short per game, and he said straight away, okay, I'll cover you for that. And he sent a cheque within 2 days to Gnome Food Bank, and he said he'll support us more. He said he likes what we're doing, he wants to do more in the community, and he will support us in the food bank more in future. So we were covered in that respect. And ongoing now, obviously school summer holidays are coming. We're conscious that the kids may not be getting fed. We've got a couple of initiatives which we're working on right now. The club's going to supply us with an autographed shirt which we can raffle. And then we're planning on doing a major online music event in the next few weeks with DJ Russ from Stadium Announcer. And just a bit of background on that, one of the Liverpool fans a couple of weeks ago, Raj from the LFC Red Indians, recorded a 1.5 hour music program, kind of disco program, a lot of LFC songs and videos and so on. And that was for fan supported Supporting Foodbanks. They raised £8,000 in one evening just for people phoning in to say, yeah, I'm donating, here's a tenner, here's 15, and so on. And Raj was announcing the totals during the course of the evening. So I spoke to him. He said, look, any way I can help. So he's been in touch with Russ now, and we were able to get him an interview on BBC through George Mann.
Yep.
We get him an interview on BBC Asian Network last Friday to talk about football food banks.
Good stuff. And for those viewers who might want to contribute, might not, be able to do so via the usual means of coming up to you or one of the collectors at the stadium outside the game. Tell us how we can contribute to the fund now, to the project.
Yeah, it's cash donations that they're so grateful for through the GiveNet page. So it's www.give.net/Newham_foodbank. And we've seen that grow, certainly since we became involved with them in January and pushed it as actively as we could. There's probably about another 10 grand that's gone in there. And I know it's today there's 63% of what their target is. But sadly, that target was pre-COVID. So, you can multiply that by 4 or 5 now with the demand that we've seen since March.
Okay. Well, full credit to you, John, for getting that scheme up and running last year. And I know what an incredible amount of work you do put into it. So on behalf of all the supporters, thank you for doing that. And also, as you mentioned there, I think, we do bash him quite a lot on this show, and we're probably going to be bashing him at some point later on in the evening. But full credit to our co-owner there for putting his hand in his pocket and supporting the project personally.
Graham, could I quickly interject?
Absolutely, my friend.
I just wanted to say that obviously I work at a school very, very, very close to the stadium, and I'm fully aware of the poverty in the area, and the food banks, certainly to do with our school, are so important. So anybody that can do anything, honestly, it's not a case that people that go to the wrong people. There's people that really do need this, and we do what we can as a school all the time. But anybody that can help, that's unbelievable. There's some amazing families and there's some amazing kids in this local area, and it's not their fault that they haven't got a pot to piss in.
Yeah, great stuff. Do you want to give the school a quick shout out, Chalks?
Bobby Moore Academy.
Okay.
Cracking school, cracking kids, cracking staff. I've met Bobby's widow Stephanie on a couple of occasions. I've met Jeff Hurst through the school, and I can tell you they'd back it up. Bobby would be extremely proud of the kids that are in that school and the people that serve those kids. It's a cracking place.
How much more appropriate could you possibly get? The Bobby Moore School benefiting. But that just goes to show, it is a really, really important project. And if you can support it, appreciate that everyone's having difficulty this time, with COVID. Everyone's struggling a little bit. But if you can support it, please do. Because John and his team are doing some absolutely incredible work. And as Chalks rightly says there, it is going to the right people, and it is a very, very important service. So thanks, John. Thanks for telling us about the program, and of course we wish you good luck going forward with it. We are going to turn our attention now to matters more West Ham. Of course, the Premier League concluded at the weekend with our final game of the season against Aston Villa. Bit of a damp squib, wasn't it, in the end? We were kind of sort of expecting it to be the decider to see who would be relegated to the Championship. In the end, we didn't need to worry about it because we took a point at Old Trafford the week before, and in the end, it was just a worry for Villa. And of course, they were the ones celebrating at the end of the afternoon. A point for them was enough to keep them up. Bournemouth relegated despite winning 3-1 at Everton. And, of course, Watford went down. Troy Deeney, our old friend Troy. Rio, I bet you were crying buckets about that one.
I'm devastated. I'm absolutely devastated.
But going back to the season as a whole, West Ham finishing the campaign with 39 points. It was our lowest points tally since we were relegated to the Championship under Avram Grant in the current administration's first season at the club. So you could say that the club are actually regressing instead of progressing. But I thought I'd just come round to the entire team just for your view on the season as a whole. If you can, Dio, I'll start with you, buddy. If you could sum up the season in 60 seconds, what would you say?
Terrible. Absolutely awful. Couple of bright spots, but other than that, it was all a bit of a damp squib. Even the relegation battle weren't particularly exciting. Yeah, let's just hope for better next year. Largely forgettable, I think.
You've got another 30 seconds, mate, if you want to carry on.
Oh, blimey, there's no pleasing sum, is it? No, I've not really got much more to add for a change. It was just one of those seasons that, you know, it's not going to live in the memory, is it, really?
Yeah.
Not much to be said about it.
No, definitely not one that there'll be too many happy memories from. Pinky, we've sat here for the last 9 games of it anyway and done the live streams as, you know, every goal and every pass has taken place. What do you take from the season? Anything that you sort of particularly enjoyed or, you know, anything you sort of really hated? Or is it, you know, as DL says, one of those just to forget in a hurry?
No, I mean, for me, it was a dreadful season for all sorts of reasons. If we take on the pitch, I think we had a very disjointed campaign. You know, when you see your backup keeper come in and then in the 6-match run, you get 1 point. You know, and the season died then because once you take 1 point from 18, you're on the road to nowhere. Then the COVID situation and supporters unable to get to games. So for me, you know, it's an unusual experience watching West Ham United on the telly. I'd rather be at the game, and I think it's a season we'll never forget, but for all the wrong reasons. It was a shocker.
Yeah, I can sense a theme developing here amongst the team. Briz, you and I have spent much of the season watching the games on TV, home games anyway. What did you make of it all, my friend?
I think it was great expectations at the beginning. I think we came off a reasonably good season. We imploded with Roberto. Went and took on David Moyes as the Messiah. Went into COVID, came out of it. Big false storm, really, where we were kind of saved by the skin of our teeth at the end of the season. And we look forward to more drudgery next season, I can imagine, under probably restricted transfer funds, not being able to shift players out of the squad. And for me, it's all been a little bit underwhelming. I think they should have ended the season when COVID kicked in and gone with promote the 2 clubs and have a bigger league this year. But again, it's about money, isn't it? And money talks.
It certainly does, and we'll be coming on to that again in a wee while. John, Bristol Hammer says it was largely underwhelming. DL said it was one to forget. Do you share those views, or was it a little bit more bright for you?
It was mixed. I mean, I remember feeling at half-time against Man City in that first game, and then we didn't do too bad in the first half, but after 90 minutes, 5-0. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, here we go again. But then early September, we were 3rd in the league after that draw at Bournemouth when Fab was injured. And, of course, after that, Roberto, it just went downhill. I remember seeing him I was behind the goal at Burnley when he palmed that one in under the bar. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And at the end of the game, he just walked straight off, head down into the corner, speak with no one. And how we had to put up with him for so long. There's obviously an issue with him at the time, and I was disappointed that Pellegrini didn't do anything about it. We just kept playing him, and we lost all those goals. And you could see the confidence draining in the defence with him at the back. That's what upset me, that it took a long time to actually change that position. And then from then, you know, we were up and down. And certainly seeing the performances in the last 9 games, I didn't expect we'd get anything to the first 3. So to beat Chelsea the way we did, and I think that was a massive boost. And the team were playing differently and playing for each other at that time. And I think that got us across the line at the end.
Great stuff. Chalks, underwhelming, disappointing. Anything sort of to take from that season, really, or you know, do you expect us to face a similar struggle next season?
No, I actually think that this last season might finally be the end of the bollocks that we've been having for years and years of players coming in and being there for the pound note. I think that we finally might have someone there in the manager that might actually try and turf these toss rags out. So it's been a bad season. I was in a lift after one of the games with Roberto, and I genuinely wish I'd have knocked him out, because we might have finished a few bits up the league, but I wouldn't put it all down to Roberto. Pellegrini let himself down. It's been shit. Let's not sugarcoat. It's been shit, but I'm hopeful for the future, because I think we've got someone in charge that's the right person for a shit club, and we're a shit club.
Great stuff. Rio, last but very much not least for this particular section, 39 points, our worst points tally since 2011. We flirted with relegation until game 37. It's not been brilliant, I guess, has it?
It's just been so typically West Ham, isn't it? You know, promised much at the start, delivered very little, and the usual cycle of misery, discontent, and fury, to be honest. I think the only bright spot we can really pick out is that two of the teams that qualified for the Champions League, we took 10 points from 12 off of. Yeah. Which is a real plus point. Just a shame the other two fucking annihilate us every single minute. Great company, crap football. Let's move on.
A very positive way to start the show there. So with everyone agreeing it's been an absolutely dreadful season. We've had a few of those over the last decade or so, but I'm sure that's something we can talk about a bit later on in the show. Moving swiftly on to our next topic of conversation. The summer transfer window is now open. A bit later than usual, but here we are. We are allowed to buy players again, or at least we would be allowed to buy players if David Moyes had any transfer funds, and it doesn't appear that that is indeed the case from comments he made following the game against Aston Villa. It looks like he may have to sell before he can buy. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask the panel, who, if you had the choice, would you sell to generate funds for future transfers? And I'm going to start with Bristol Hammer on this one. Briz, what do you think?
I think the sad thing is I think Declan Rice is going to go, and that's 70 million, I think, in the pot straight off. Just because I think he's had his head turned by Chelsea. I think, why would he want to stay and play for us when we're bottom of the league, playing that kind of drudgery week in, week out? So I think that's going to generate some funds. I think I would lose Lanzini. I don't think he's been same player post-injury. I think Anderson couldn't be bothered last season. You don't want players like that when you're trying to kind of rebuild and go and say, well, I think Anderson should go. For me, I would lose Wilshere. Just cancel his contract. We're not going to play him. He's on the bench in games where nothing matters. We're not going to play him. Let's cancel the guy's contract. Let him go and out to pasture. I'd probably look to Yarmolenko and Masuaku to get rid of as well, just because I think if you're going to have that amount of talent sat on the bench and not use them to any great extent, then don't have them. Let's sell them. Let's get some players in that are hungry, want to actually play the game. Some great young players about at the moment, and we should be looking to build on that and not having some of these journeymen come in and just waste away their time on the bench.
Yeah, some very interesting stuff there. I think we're going to get some common themes again in terms of who we'd like to move on. I think Jack Wilshere might just crop up once or twice. The question, of course, with Jack is, Briz has obviously raised the possibility of cancelling his contract, which would be a costly thing to do, I guess. But I just wonder if anyone would consider buying him. Maybe Leeds, one of the teams coming up, West Brom, perhaps, or whoever else comes up with them. DL, if it was up to you, who would you sell to generate funds, and also who do you think is likely to go?
See, I said in the previous cast who I'd sell, and it's ain't popular, but if we had a decent board that would put all of the money in for the greater good, I would let Rice go for a massive, great big sum of money and completely rebuild the team. If one man doesn't make a team and you know, as sad as it would be to see him go, if the money was invested wisely, we could do what Tottenham did with the Gareth Bale money, what Liverpool have done with Coutinho money. Problem we've got is we've got a board that would probably just trouser the money and use it to run the club on a day-to-day basis. So that's out. I can see Rice going.
Yeah.
But
where to? Chelsea?
Yeah, or maybe even abroad, but possibly not this season. I'd be more comfortable if he went abroad than across the West London.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just a case of trying to get rid of all the deadwood. We ain't got any players that are worth that much, have we? I mean, people are saying get rid of Haller and Anderson, but for the money we pay for them, we're going to take a massive hit. So personally, I'd try and keep them a year, get them to play at the form so we can bin them off next year for a sum, or if they have a good season, then we keep them. It's getting rid of the fringe players. We've got rid of, what's his bloody name? The bald-headed Argentinian bloke whose name I can't bloody remember. The right Zabaleta, he's gone. That's freed up some money off the books. We need to replace Ngakia, but I think Johnson's going to do that job. Who else? Roberto's, keep him out on loan. He can go on loan somewhere. What we need, I don't think it's a case of selling people because I think we're a bit thin on the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to get the money in to justify getting rid of them, if you know what I mean. So maybe loan people out, get them off the wage bill. And if we have to rely on Moyes to go and get some bargains from the lower leagues, getting a couple of freebies for next season, see how we get on. I'm not expecting a massive push on next season. But the season after, when finances are back to normal, hopefully after this COVID, then dig into it, maybe get rid of the Lanzinis and Andersons. But I'm thinking it may not be the best idea to get rid of players that we're going to take a hit on because we're not going to replace them for the money that we're selling for.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, DL. Chalks, DL mentioning our two most expensive incoming transfers there, Sebastian Haller and, of course, Felipe Anderson. One seems to have a very low stock amongst West Ham fans. That, of course, our Brazilian winger. Haller, a lot of people I speak to say that they see a player there, but we just haven't seen it yet. Would you persist with either or both of those, or would you be looking to sell those? And again, to you, who else would you want to move on?
My main issue really is, and I know you know me, I don't trust anything that comes from his owner's mouth. I don't trust transfer fees. I don't trust anything. So selling players, it doesn't bother me whether we signed Haller for a supposed 45 million and sell him for 20 million. That means nothing to me. It's a couple of numbers. Mm-hmm. So getting that out of the way, that there's supposed money involved, I would firstly get rid of Anderson. I think he's one of the biggest disgraces we've ever had in the shirt. Haller, I struggle with because he's clearly a talented boy, but he also clearly doesn't really give too much of a shit. And it's the usual names. It's the names that most are saying. But what I don't trust is the reinvestment. Mm-hmm. So anybody that we get rid of, I would far rather Moyes had the option of trade-ins. Because if they put in a press that they're selling Haller for 35 million, as far as I'm concerned, it's bullshit, and Moyes won't get a penny of it, and it doesn't add up anyway. So I'd rather players came in that the manager wants, and we all know the ones he's going to get rid of. Masuaku's going to go. Mm-hmm. I've got a bit of an exclusive that I can chuck straight out here now.
Let's have it.
From the horse's mouth. I was talking to a former first team player at the club last week, and Mr. Moyes has been talking to him on 3 or 4 occasions, asking him if he wants to come back to the club. And you'll be surprised considering we've now signed Souček, but Moyes really does like Kouyaté. Just chucking that one in there. But
Interesting.
but that's where I'm coming from. I've got such a distrust of the owners that it doesn't come down to funds that come in, funds that go out.
Yeah.
I don't trust them.
Interesting link there, Chiati, possibly the most effective central midfielder we had prior to Thomas Souček turning up, I guess, or in that particular position anyway. So we shall see what happens, mate.
Can I just say one other thing?
Yep.
Do you remember Nielsen Fernandez?
Yes.
Yeah, scored the win against Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
I was chatting to him on Sunday. Asked him if he wants to come back to West Ham. Loving it. Yeah, his English isn't great. The conversation we'd had him ended up telling me that he wants to come back to West Ham at the end of next season after his loan finishes at Fiorentina. I subsequently find out that he doesn't play for Fiorentina. He's now at Mainz in Germany. So, yeah. Was it Chelsea he scored against? Did he score against Tottenham as well? Yeah.
Or am I getting confused?
I know it was Chelsea in the cup, the winner,
Yeah.
the 2-1 cup game. But as I say, he was telling me how much he loved West Ham and he wants to come back and he wants to get the European Championships out of the way. And I then find out after the conversation that he actually doesn't even play for Fiorentina on loan. He's gone permanently to Mainz. So I think he mugged me off.
Well, it's looking that way a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But nice to know that our ex-players appreciate the club anyway. And
yeah. Chiati does. He loves it. He loves West Ham.
But he was very popular, wasn't he, during his spell? Very popular amongst the players. John, thanks, Chalks. We're hearing the same names crop up time and time again. If you were to be in David Moyes' shoes, would you be sort of following the trends here, looking at the Andersons and the Hilairs and Yarmolenkos, perhaps, people like that? Or is there anyone sort of surprising that you would look to offload and generate some funds from? Declan Rice, perhaps?
It's funny, just going back to that last comment about Hernandez. I remember when he first arrived, one of his first interviews were, I'm using West Ham as a stepping stone to move on to a bigger club. I remember that clearly, so we can see where he is right now.
Yeah, Carlton Cole said that once as well, didn't he? Many moons ago.
Moyes has already said that there's a £200 million previous hole that they have to clear out first before they spend. But for me, yes, they need to oil the revolving door. For me, Anderson, he's just not doing it. We haven't missed him in these 9 games. Likewise, Lanzini, he's just not the player that he was, and maybe he needs a change of atmosphere and being somewhere else. Likewise, I get very nervous to see Masuaku coming on the pitch. We all know he's not a left back, and he's an accident waiting to happen, sadly. For Haller, I think it's a case of getting the first season under his belt, and there's more good stuff to come from him. Wilshere, who's going to take him? For $100,000 a week. He seems to be fit now. He hasn't been injured during these games, so he seems to have got that behind him. I think there's out of the incomings, I've got a feeling that they're coming from the Championship. Eze from QPR and the guy from Wigan, the full-back, possibly also the Brentford forward. So I think that's where he's going to be shopping now. But the bottom line is that you've got to spend to keep still, because everybody's spending, and you've got to spend that extra cash just to improve and be the same as the other teams. He's got to spend some cash.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens, won't it, this summer, to see who is shelling out and who isn't. I know Moyes has obviously pleaded poverty already, and we haven't heard that from any other managers yet, but I'm sure 1 or 2 clubs will follow it in due course. Pinky, we've heard about Haller, perhaps hasn't quite done it. Other people, as I mentioned before, say they think there's a player in there. One thing about Haller we do know, that probably isn't widely known, is that earlier in the season, one of his children was very, very ill. And we know that that must have taken its toll the first few weeks of his time in England. And I guess it's that sort of thing that we as supporters don't generally see. We're just fed the stuff from the club in terms of their standard interviews, and we never hear about things like that. So maybe that's played its part. But It doesn't seem to be any excuses for Felipe Anderson, who everybody has cited as a potential sale this summer. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, in general terms, we've got to sell who we can rather than who we want. You know, if the idea is to raise funds, but
Yep.
certainly Anderson would be very near the top of my list to ship out. He doesn't do enough to justify the fee that we paid. You know, we had probably 3/4 of a half decent season out of him, and that's about it. I'm not sure he wants to be here. So if we can get a sizable fee, I'd move him on. But the brutal truth is we haven't got many crown jewels we can sell other than the absolutely obvious.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit more optimistic about Rice than one or two others on here. I don't think we'll move him on this summer. I think he'll be retained. The player the controversial player who I'd look to ship out would be Diop. I think he's a player that could generate a reasonable fee. I think he will go on to be an excellent centre-back, but I don't think he's an excellent centre-back at this point in time. And so he's one that we could probably turn a profit on and reinvest his funds. And I think we're going to need to sell somebody like him, because as nice as it would be to think we'll get someone to take Wilshere off our hands, even Masuaku off our hands, you know, who?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, who's going to take these players? So it will be sell one good player, get enough money to actually square the books away, and just rebuild with 3 or 4 other players with the fee you get from Diop. And that's what I think I would do.
Yeah, I guess the conundrum there is, as Chalks referred to earlier, is whether, you know, that entire transfer fee is reinvested in the squad or whether it goes somewhere else. And of course, we've had plenty of history of that over the years, going right back to sort of Frank Lampard, Rio Ferdinand. Though to be fair, I suppose a lot of that wasn't reinvested, but just in the wrong places. But I think as a club, we don't have a history, do we, of reinvesting wisely when we sell our best players. Rio, Pinky has mentioned Diop there, which is a very interesting suggestion. You know, saying that if he had to choose someone to get rid of to generate funds, that's who he'd be looking at. Any thoughts on that? John, of course, mentioned Manuel Lanzini, who I think most of us would agree hasn't really been the same player since he came back from that terrible injury that he suffered just prior to the World Cup. Again, Anderson, Hilaire, these names mentioned. Anyone you want to throw in the mix we haven't heard of yet, or do you go along with that? I appreciate that it's difficult going after everybody else has.
No, I mean, I can't really add to what the gents have said. You know, the usual suspects. Lanzini's he's been a busted flush since his injury.
Yeah.
Arthur. What teams are desperate for a twinkle-toed left wing back? You know, and this is the problem, as they've said as well. How much are we going to get for these players? And the biggest problem for me is that how often, under the current ownership, have we actually maximised the amount of money we receive for a player?
Yeah.
We seem to sell everyone for far less price than everyone else would charge. That's another issue for me. But yeah, the usual suspects. It's a Diop I'd keep. I think he had a really good first season. This year, it's been awkward for everybody, isn't it? But I think a more defensive mind manager, someone with a bit of technical now, might get a lot more out of him. So hopefully Moyes is far more organised at the back. So hopefully Diop will shine next year if he's still here.
Good stuff. Well, we shall, of course, find out in due course. The transfer window only lasts for a few weeks, if I remember rightly. It remains open until the 5th or 6th of October internationally. And then domestically, we can purchase players from the Championship or the EFL up until the 16th of October, another week or two. So a very, very short transfer window this year, kind of necessitated by the current situation, which has thrown everything up in the air, of course. One player I'm going to throw into the mix, and this will probably be hugely unpopular, and someone I mentioned at the weekend, is Mikhail Antonio, a player who's only got 1 year left on his contract. He's going to be 31 by the time it ends. If he does stay, it's going to require a hugely lucrative contract, I would imagine, because it's going to be his last contract as a pro, especially at that level. And I just wonder if other clubs, you know, probably better financially positioned than West Ham United are, might be looking at that if he was their player and sort of saying, you know, I think this is a good time to sell him. You know, his stock is high. He's the leading goal scorer in the Premier League since Project Restart began. And I just wonder if this summer it might be, you know, sort of looking at, sort of thinking someone like Palace or someone like that, or Villa or one of the newly promoted sides, and cashing in maybe at sort of 15 to 20 million and reinvesting that. As I said, I'm sure that won't be particularly popular, but I guess if we're coming to the last couple of weeks and we still need to generate some funds, then David Moyes might have to make an unpopular decision or two. So anyway, as I said, some good suggestions. Thank you, team. We've pretty much cited everyone in the entire squad there, I think, at some point. But I guess with a few of us on the team tonight, that's bound to happen. So there you go. So that's who we would sell, who we'd like to see go in the summer to generate funds for Mr. Moyes' campaign next season. Moving on and talking about, obviously, Premier League footballers, players these days are wealthier than they ever have been. Massive contracts, multi-millionaires by the time they leave their teams, a lot of players these days. And it sort of leads me on to a question, and this is kind of involved with the sort of thing that John's been doing with the Irons Supporting Foodbanks project. And I just wonder if wealthy footballers and the clubs especially do enough for their community these days. You know, there is a suggestion that clubs may have lost that community connection that they used to have. We were all clubs, of course, were at the heart of their local community 100 years ago, or even as recently as 50 years ago. It's not the case anymore. People generally don't always support their local team. You know, you see a lot of kids support the wealthier teams or the successful teams, and I just wonder if that is an issue. So I'm just throwing that open generally to the panel. What do we sort of think? John, I'm going to come to you first, because this is sort of something that you're involved with, clubs in the community. Do you think there's sort of a discord there now between the clubs and the community? And if so, what can they do to sort of get closer and once again, as it perhaps used to be?
Well, I mean, we've got our own West Ham Foundation, haven't we, that seems to have a high profile locally. I mean, they help out Newham Foodbanks. They provide a vehicle and a delivery driver every Friday to collect from Beckton and deliver around to vulnerable families. So they do that regularly every week. You know, that's one area. I suppose the other thing is that a lot of the high profile players don't want the publicity. You know, these things go on in the background that we're not aware of, but you can bet your bottom dollar that you look at Mane at Liverpool, for example, how much, you know, what he does. He's quite happy to go around with a cracked smartphone, but send so much of his money to Senegal, you know, to build soccer schools and hospitals and whatever. And we've got our own, you know, Declan Rice. He donated a few £1,000 to Newham Food Bank quite recently. Skipper gives his weekly Evening Standard article fee to Newham Food Bank. I've seen elsewhere, you know, sometimes it doesn't hit mainstream media what they do. I know, for example, Jesse Lingard, close to us, played for a time for a Warrington boys team when he was a kid, and he turned up recently and said to them, look, what do you guys need? And the trainer said, look, we need training jackets because we're training in the evening in the winter. Next thing, you know, a couple of boxes of warm training jackets turn up, care of, you know, Jesse Lingard. So these things are happening in the background. We don't see it all. I know Everton locally, they have people that help out local community. I think it was Naismith in his playing days that always bought, I think it was 20 tickets for every home game. And he donated them to local social security and the unemployed, and they were able to distribute them. And he did that, you know, throughout the whole season. So there are these little good news stories which are popping around.
Yeah, it's. I think that's a very interesting point you raised there, John. And actually, Pinky, maybe you want to comment on this one, but is it perhaps the case that footballers are doing their bit for the communities, but it's just not recognised? Is there sort of a reluctance perhaps to credit footballers for their charitable work?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, you know, I don't think we've touched on, you know, Marcus Rashford and what he did in terms of school meals and so forth.
Yeah.
And we know certainly a number of our players give their time, whether in hospital visits, charitable donations. We've got our own Bobby Moore fund as well, which raises considerable sums for charity. So, I think players, they become an easy target because, the back page of whatever your newspaper is, the story is Premier League player blows 50 grand on a private jet to go to Dubai. That's the story.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's no story in Premier League player gives up 3 nights this week to visit local children's hospital. But I have a feeling rather more Premier League players do the second activity than the first.
Yeah.
So I'm firmly in the camp of cut them some slack, and actually good for them. We saw, the charity shirts for that Jordan Henderson organised. For every Premier League club, every player, they do plenty. They do plenty, the players, and you could look at the FTSE 100 companies, the chairman, and say all those guys are on Premier League style salaries. Yeah, how many of them are giving up their time to support local charities? Now, I know some of them do. I know absolutely, certainly for certain some do. But why pick on Premier League players? I think most of them are good guys in the main, and hats off to them. That's what I say.
Do you think there's an element of perhaps jealousy for the media that these are generally working class lads that have made good, and as a consequence, they're seen as as an easy target?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there was someone put something together on Twitter, which was a front page story for Raheem Sterling going back 3 years.
Yeah,
and it was like 50 front page stories, all of them negative. Yeah, and you're thinking there's an agenda here, and put aside the obvious race issue there. It is, we don't like the fact that young working class men have actually found a profession where they can earn a trouser load of money, and we don't like it. That's the message that's being sent out, and I say no. Good luck to the players. Most of them are decent people. Most of them are good professionals. They go to training, do their jobs, support charities, do their bit on a Saturday. Model professionals.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Breeze, one thing that we are very aware of course, at West Ham United is the fact that the club left Upton Park 4 years ago. There was some, I was going to say promises, but you can't really call them promises because we know what David Gold thinks about promises. But there were noises made that when we would move, we would support the local businesses and offer them the opportunity to come with us to Stratford. That didn't quite turn out to be the case, did it? But, what do you think should happen in those circumstances? When a club as wealthy as West Ham United can do that, do you think they sort of have an obligation to support those businesses, especially businesses like, we're talking about the pie and mash shops and things like that made 40% or whatever of their weekly revenue. They turned that over on one day on a match day. Do you think the clubs have an obligation to support those businesses, or is it just a case of this is capitalism, this is the way of the world, tough luck basically?
I think, to be honest with you, the clubs, especially our club, has disregarded its roots now. I think they've gone, well, that's it, we've moved. Don't really give a toss about, the business that we've left behind. We're now a Stratford-based club. And I think that's kind of almost in the realms of turning football into a franchise, where club owners can just sell the product. It can be picked up and dropped in another town or in another kind of city and say, okay, we're now going to play from here. A little bit kind of slightly different to the MK Dons model and, things like that. But we're almost getting into the realm. If we start to lose touch with the communities that the people have grown over time to with the club and have that link with the club, and we start becoming a franchise, then the clubs are lost. And we're just getting into the realms of kind of American sport where it's who's ever got the biggest wallet can transfer that football team into wherever they want it. I'm a big fan of Bristol Rugby down here, and one of the things they do here for the players is when a new player signs for the club, the old players take them out to their old places in Bristol, take them to pubs, get them out into shopping centres. They're meeting the public, and the manager of Bristol Rugby, Pat Lamb, always says you need to meet the people you're playing for. You need to understand what you have to give week in, week out, and what it means to them. And I think that's kind of ethos that we've lost with football. I think it's become a game where we have celebrities now that turn up on a Saturday. I don't doubt that every player does their bit for charity. I've got no problem with that. But I just think there's a loss of that link to those local communities. Those kids playing out there on the fields on a Saturday, whose dads knew somebody with the club, or whose uncle grew up with somebody, went to school with somebody.
Mhm.
And I think that's an element missing from the game at the moment. I just think we're in danger of becoming football as a franchise.
Thanks. And DL, we see going back to what Bristol Hammer was talking about there. You know, back in the old days, I'm sure we've all seen the advert with Bobby Moore and teammates in the pub after the game, sitting there enjoying a beer. Obviously, it doesn't happen anymore. What we see more these days is when players leave the ground, you see kids approaching them at their cars, leaning in the window, getting a selfie with them, having a video. Do you agree that there's a disconnect there now between the players and the supporters? And if that's the case, how do we remedy that?
No, I don't think there is a disconnect. It's the connection between players and supporters has changed.
Yeah.
Players, I think, are more accessible now via social media, Twitter, and the like than they ever were.
Good point.
Just the technology's changed and how we interact with them. But if I can come back to what Bristol was saying about the club bailing out the local businesses when we move ground, and it's sort of going back to something that Pinky said as well about how many chief executives of companies do what footballers do. It's footballers that get picked up. And it's a similar sort of thing, right? The way I look at it, for years, there was a lot of businesses that were earning a good living hanging on the coattails of West Ham United Football Club. Now, why should it be different for a football club when they move? Why should they have to put money into the local businesses? Because rest assured, down the road from me, there's a big Amazon warehouse being built, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the local cafes and stuff, they're doing a roaring trade now they're reopened. So if Amazon were to up sticks and go and build a bigger warehouse elsewhere, do they own the local caf? Have they got to be bailed out because Amazon's no longer there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think that West Ham actually owe the businesses anything. The business is there. Sad to see them go, like the Pie and Mash shop and Ken's Cafe and whatever. But let's be realistic. For decades, they have hung on to coattails of West Ham United and earned a great living. And that's not putting them down or anything like that. But times do change. High streets change. This is just one of the modern day changes. And on the other side of the coin, you've now got people like the Ridman down at the Olympic Stadium, who's now making a good living again off of West Ham. So it's we're one
swings and roundabouts, basically.
Somebody else will take their place in the different area, and to me that's just how it is. And I don't think the club owe the businesses around Upton Park. Maybe it should be looked at that the locals of Upton Park should be the ones supporting the businesses rather than a football club. Personally.
Okay, great stuff. Chalks, you are of course a good friend of the Ridman. You're on mute at the moment, buddy. We need to unmute you. We can't hear you right now. As DL says, the clubs. He doesn't believe that the clubs have a responsibility to look after those businesses that have grown up around the clubs and have made a living from it. It's a natural progression in a way. Your clubs move on. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that there is a community responsibility? I mean, you obviously work in the local school where they benefit from food banks, etc., charity. What's your whole view on that whole thing about the club's responsibility?
I think it's difficult because I totally agree with what Dyers was just saying about your Ken's Cafe and your local businesses that have profited off of West Ham.
Mm-hmm.
I would quickly go back to Mark, the Ridman. And I would say that he hasn't made anything from the club. The club have actually made off him, and he's been massively striped up by the club. That's another subject. And he, as I say, he's a good mate of mine. So, but yeah, with the local businesses, it's tough. It's tough because when we left the bowling, we do know that everybody was, all the local businesses, you know, even the guys that were doing the sweets on Green Street.
Yeah.
You know, we all know who they were. Everyone knew them, and they were just a couple of fellas. But they were promised something, and everyone was promised this. And what it comes back to is that people were promised stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is. Don't promise stuff if you're not going to deliver it. And it's a much bigger picture, obviously. But, yeah, you know, for me, it comes back to the promises. You shouldn't, your pie mashes, etc., like Dyer's just said, yeah, they've all learned off the back of West Ham.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough. You know, it's hard. And I'm with everyone on that. But where do you stop?
Yeah.
They had plenty of time. They had plenty of notice. They could well have adjusted their business. They could have made preparations for when West Ham did leave the bowling ground. It wasn't a secret. It didn't happen overnight.
No, but then again, I suppose the issue there, DL, is that, I mean, take someone like, Nathan's, for example, the pie mash shop. I suppose for many people, that was part of their journey to the ground, wasn't it? They'd pass the shop, they would stop there, eat, go on to the bowling or whatever, and then roll into the ground. I suppose the thing now is that what have we got between the station and the ground? You know, that whole soulless walk. I mean, thankfully, John and the Irons Supporting Foodbanks team have managed to set up partly along there and give it a bit of colour, put a bit of claret and blue into that wall. But, you know, I guess apart from that, if you're not going into the shopping centre, there's nothing, is there? There's none of those traditional shops or places to stop. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, but go on, Dee, I'll let you come back on that.
Yeah, I mean, I do get that. But then at the end of the day, it's like the people lamented the loss of Woolworths, for example. Oh, it's not the same. Woolworths have gone. They only went because nobody used them. And, you know, instead of maybe the club having a responsibility, what was to stop supporters going down and still going into Nathan's or into Ken's Cafe and whatever? It's like, because the ground's gone and these places gone out of business, it's West Ham United's fault. But there was still nothing stopping us from going down and doing it.
Dale, I agree with you in terms of the businesses, but in terms of us as a club, we're still called West Ham United. We're not called Stratford United. I mean, let's change the name then. We're going to move to Stratford. We're going to have a whole hog. Let's call ourselves Stratford United. Let's detach completely from West Ham. If that's what, you know, we're saying here is we're moving on and doing that. And I think that's the problem I have with the club is when it suits it, it's okay to go back to its roots. It's okay to go back to West Ham. It's okay to go back to Green Street. You look at the merchandise of the club, it's all focused around our roots and our history, unless it comes to actually helping out within that terms of that community. And then it's, well, actually, no, we're in Stratford now and we've got to carry on with that. So I think
it's closer to West Ham now than the bowling ground was.
I understand that, but I think it's the hypocrisy of using that memorabilia of that time period, of those connections to that community, and then in the other breath, is turning around and shafting all those kind of people that were promised concessions and promised that they'll be part of it when the ground moves. So I think I totally agree with you. In the terms of big business, that's the way life is. But it's West Ham United. They cling on to those kind of community roots and then don't back it up with their actions afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I get with the broken promises to the trade. You know,
quick answer, if you could, DL, just a very quick response.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty low blow, which is, you know, what you kind of expect from our board. But, you know, what can be done about, say, the businesses that have gone out of business? You couldn't have accommodated everybody anyway, not in Stratford. So,
can I just say something
quickly? Yep, go on.
Yeah, very quickly. A lot of what's said about local businesses and what's been lost, what's this and what's that, comes off the back of a lot of people think that everything to do with the club now is coming into Westfield and going out of Westfield. And it's all corporate and it's all just a load of old shit. It's a shopping centre. people need to come in the other side and go over Hackney Wick. There's a lot of local little businesses there that are cracking. You've got local breweries, you've got little cafes. Now, they could be the future of West Ham. They could be what we had at Nathan's. They could be what we had at Ken's Cafe. And maybe we move on. We don't want to, but maybe we move on from your Ken's Cafes and your Nathan's and your Urcans.
Mm-hmm.
But these little places on the Hackney Wick side are honestly, I've been in them. They're cracking little places, but no one looks at them. No one goes there. Everyone thinks it's Westfield.
Yeah, I guess that's just a case of being off the beaten track, isn't it, really, in terms of, the main drag coming through. But there you go. Great suggestion from Chalks. If you're looking for an alternative, go to Hackney Wick and see what they've got on there. John, come to you very quickly before I go to
just really quickly throw a bit of balance about Ken's Cafe. I think I certainly went there a few times in the last season. The place was always packed. It was, it was everybody's stopping route. And I called in probably 3 months after the new season, after we moved. I think Clyde Best was doing a book signing around the corner, so they arranged to meet someone in Ken's Cafe, and I was talking to Mrs. Ken and said, look, how is it? We're all so sorry to see you go. She said, don't worry about us, love. She said, we've got the builders coming here 5 days a week for breakfasts and for lunches. We've never made so much money. We've never been so busy. So for us going there as fans once a fortnight, to them having effectively, 10 full houses a week, they did very, very well when they closed down. So there certainly weren't grumbles or she didn't want any sympathy the way that turned out.
Yeah, I guess that's a very good point, actually. Yes, but I guess again with that, isn't it? It's only a limited time period. Once the Upton Gardens or whatever they're called is complete, the builders are going to move on elsewhere. And but yeah, I mean that's certainly they're quite different to the rest of the businesses around there, I think, that used to rely on the trade. Of course, we're seeing the Boleyn completely revamped on the corner of Green Street and the Barking Road being done up as we speak. Rio, I'm going to come to you, my friend, because you've been sitting there very patiently waiting to offer your input on this particular subject. I just really wanted to ask you, do you think that clubs should be forced by some kind of legislation to make a mandatory community development contribution? Do you think, they should set aside some funds for that purpose alone?
Yeah, definitely. I think I will defend the club on this particular section. Under previous regimes, our charitable contributions weren't particularly good. Since Golden and Sullivan have been in place, we've seen a really big upturn in that. Mm-hmm. We've got the links with Richard House, St Francis Hospice, Dylan Tom Beatties and Bobby Moore has been mentioned.
Yep.
And they're really positive. We've got the Players Project. They've done a marvellous job. Mm-hmm. On a personal level, we've seen Mark Noble and David Moyes both make public contributions that have been mentioned regarding the COVID effort. So, yeah, it's a massive contribution, and long may it continue. That is where the direction they're going in is exactly the right one. Yeah. It's a really positive thing to say about Golden and Sullivan, particularly from me, but I'm really happy with that. In terms of the businesses, I think what part of the problem is, when we moved to Stratford, to get a cheap deal, we threw our towel in with London Stadium, didn't we? And they're the ones who are preventing, in essence, some of the traders moving over towards there and trading. So you've got to look at London Stadium, us negotiating a cheap deal where we can't really promise anybody anything because we don't own the land.
Yeah.
You've also got to look at Newham Council. What have they done to encourage traders? Yeah. Absolutely nothing. So yeah, it's kind of a three-way kind of conundrum, that one. But it's not strictly entirely the club's fault. You've got to look at three different parties for that one.
Yeah, I guess what people may argue is that the club willingly threw themselves into that contract, and they knew what the circumstances were. And of course, we have been lobbying the club since the day I think we moved into the Olympic Stadium, London Stadium, whatever you want to call it, to try and get them to chase the council or the landowners to allow more tradesmen, little businesses to populate that route. But it just hasn't happened yet, has it? For some reason, I know I'm fairly certain that in past discussions with Karen Brady, she sort of promised to look into that, but unfortunately, that's never really materialised. But yeah, it's a difficult one, as you say. You know, you're absolutely right. I think it isn't just West Ham United who decide, you know, what goes on that walk. And of course, you've got great opposition from Westfield as well, who don't want to lose business to, you know, some guy, as was mentioned earlier, selling his sweets outside the stadium for £1 a bag. You know, so. But a very interesting and illuminating discussion. Anyway, gentlemen, we could go on all night about the club's community responsibilities, but good to hear your views on that. We're going to move on now to the forum discussion for the week. Now, one of the big subject matters that's come out this week has been the season ticket renewals. Fans were informed this week of how that would operate in the wake of the current pandemic and supporters not being allowed back inside the stadium. West Ham United are looking to run a ballot, but not before they've got everybody's money, of course. Which some people have seen as a completely fair and just way of doing it. Others have suggested that it might be fans giving a couple of billionaires an interest-free loan of around £25 million. It's certainly caused a lot of controversy in the last couple of days. And even today, as late as today, we've seen the terms and conditions relating to that change with the club's admission that some fans can defer their seats until next year by paying a deposit. But going to go around the room now and just see what your thoughts are on this and whether the guys here are intending to renew. First of all, Pinky, set up there under the boomerang once again. Will you be renewing this year? And if not, why not?
Yeah, of course I will, because if I was going to bail out, it would have been when we moved.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't. I bottled it. And I'll go every year till the day I'll drop dead. That's how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Am I happy about the way the club have handled the renewal process? No. Am I happy the fact that ours and every other club seems to think that getting an interest-free loan every single year, it's not just this year, it's every year, is an appropriate way to run their businesses? No, I don't. But I think in this particular year, the UK has 9.5 million people on furlough. Mm-hmm. That's a quarter of its workforce. We can see, and John has spoken about earlier, and Chalks has spoken very eloquently about the social deprivation of the borough in which our club is located.
Yep.
People are struggling, but they also want to support their team. And to try and press gang people into lending money, and let's call it what it is, to a business that its own shareholders won't lend money to it for free. They charge a rate of interest, a very substantial rate of interest, I think is morally bankrupt by the board of directors. I think it's a complete disgrace. I think it's an illustration of how out of touch our board are with both reality and our supporters, and nothing illustrates the lack of meaningful dialogue with supporters groups more than this fiasco, because what we've seen is the well-trodden path. A policy is announced, they assess the backlash on social media, West Ham United fan sites such as KUMB, from the ICEs then phoning up and saying, you must be joking, we're not doing this. And then there's a modification made to the policy, which softens it. And, you know, it happens too often for it to be a coincidence. So for me, yeah, I'll renew, but you know what? It's just another sort of nail in the coffin of the supporters' relationship with the owners. And they really don't help themselves at times. They really don't.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, that modification you referred to there today, which will allow supporters to defer their season tickets for a season. As we understand it, that was suggested during a meeting between the supporters group and club representatives last week. And we also are led to believe that it was sort of seen to be quite a good idea. Yet, when the policy was announced on Monday, it was missing. It wasn't there. And of course, as you've rightly mentioned there, it's back there today. So we don't know exactly what's gone on at the club, but clearly there's been some a change of heart anyway. Let's put it that way.
It looks like the club have chanced their arm.
Yeah.
Let's go for broke, see what we can squeeze out. No, they didn't like that. Oh, we'll give them a slightly softer version now. You know, come on, don't take us for mugs. Stop taking us for mugs.
It's quite similar, isn't it? I mean, we're going back to sort of the start of their tenure a decade or so ago, but we had that fiasco with the discount, the season ticket discount that was promised by the previous administration to season ticket holders. I think you had to be a season ticket holder for 5 years, and they sort of attempted to renege on that at the time, didn't they? It was saying they hadn't done their due diligence properly and weren't aware that that was actually public. But yeah, there is a sort of feeling that I tend to agree that they do try to, as you say, chance their arm a little bit, see what they can get away with. When they realise they can't get away with it, it's the policy changes. But I guess the point of that is that they lose a lot of goodwill by doing it that way as well.
Absolutely. And if you look in the club's accounts, the numbers they publish when they eventually get around to publishing them, the financial results always contain an element for goodwill. And I'd just like to know how much goodwill they really think they've got and who they think they've got it with. Because yet again, this would have been a great time for the club to actually build bridges with supporters, actually make friends with supporters, and they've chosen not to do it. The shareholders had a rights issue a month ago to raise £30 million. I think I said on one of these programs a month ago that I felt that another rights issue might be needed if that's all they've raised. And clearly our club is underfunded, is undercapitalised. Why didn't the shareholders put in £60 million?
Yeah.
And then what they could have done is just said this time around, do you know what? We're not going to ask you for your money a year in advance. We can take a more realistic view, bearing in mind what's going on in the economy generally. And I think it's another trick the club have missed because they're just out of touch with the supporters. They really are.
Rio, thank you, Pinky. Rio, you've obviously had a chance to assess what's been said in the last couple of days. Has it changed your views about renewing, or are you going to be back there regardless next season?
I'm going to play Spot the Mug now because I renewed for me and my son last night.
Oh, well done.
Quick off the ball. But my choice was because, like Pinky, there's no way I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I despise the ownership. It's my club. It's what I've been doing since I was 11.
Yeah.
It's like 37 years now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop going. I still love the club. Pinky put it more eloquently than I ever could. The way that they handle things is so unprofessional. It's borderline scaremongering. It's pretty despicable. And at the current time, it's uncalled for. And as Pinky just said, for them to change their mind on a real key aspect overnight, within 24 hours of the announcement, what does it make them look like? Because it's not a professional outfit. It's the old corner shop analogy. They're not putting themselves in any positive light. They're not offering themselves any kind of positivity amongst the fan base, which is already disgruntled. They're winding people up even more, and things are only going to get worse on that side.
Okay, thanks, Rio. John, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you travel further than anyone. You might even travel further than all of us added together, actually, to get to a home game, thinking about it. What are your views on this, and is it going to affect your decision to renew next season?
I've renewed already. I did it late last night. I thought, but just as much as getting to games, if I'm lucky enough to win that particular lottery, it's the food bank issue as well. Will we be allowed to collect? Okay, there'll be a reduced attendance, but I think collectively within the group of fan food bank groups that we'd have to see where we stand going forward from October, November time. But I agree with what Pinky says about the club pushing it. And what disappoints me overall, I've always been one to share best practice and to learn from others. And you would really think that our club would be talking to 18 other clubs now to say, what are you doing next season about season tickets?
Yeah.
And they could take the best examples. I saw someone on the forum earlier today has picked up the data from half a dozen Premier League clubs and said, well, this is what Southampton are doing, so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think equally the FSA should be doing this sort of work for food, for ISAs and fan groups as well, so that they can hold clubs to account collectively and say, if that club can offer this, why can't you do the same? Because it's the same for everybody. So that's what annoys me, that there's no kind of external body looking into it and pulling it all together to say, this is the league table of how good you are in offering a season ticket deal to your fans. And I think that that needs to go out into the open just to see where we sit in this league table, and it's our club, why aren't we at the top? With respect to what Pinky says often about the owners and the way it's run,
yeah.
Why isn't our club, the club that we support, sat at the top of this league saying we're offering the best deal for our fans?
Just coming back to the point about the collections there, is it still viable for you to set up on a match day if there's only 20,000 fans coming through the gate?
That's just it. We don't know. I mean, hey, Burnley were doing it with 20,000 fans last season.
Yeah.
So we don't know. I think collectively we have to see how it goes. But there are other ways now of certainly raising finance to help local food bank groups. Liverpool and Everton are setting off a coast-to-coast sponsored cycle ride tomorrow morning to raise money. So it's not just about putting the tin in the box. If we can raise the right amount of cash and it's used in the right way, then that's just as good. It would be a shame that if we're not able to collect. And certainly, as far as we're concerned, Irons Supporting Foodbanks, next season we're going to be moved anyway slightly, because the temporary information office is due to be moved by September, October into the new wooden building that was being built there last season. And
right.
I've been told that we can be in the same place, but use that to where we can store our banner and our kits and our bibs and so on. So we have to look at it collectively to see if it's a viability or not. To still collect physically.
Okay. Well, let's hope, of course, that it is. It does prove to be viable, because it would be a shame to stop that. You really had the momentum going there, didn't you, for a few months, and then, had no choice but to stop. But let's hope that is indeed the case. Briz, question that I wanted to ask you, sort of related to this. We've talked about how the club, Pinky mentioned the fact that there's been a share issue. They put in, the directors put in £30 million. Is wondering why they didn't put in more when it seems necessary for the club to generate more funds that we don't currently have. But do you think it's what's your views on the perception of the club asking the supporters to bail them out by effectively giving them a £20-25 million loan of season ticket money?
I think, first of all, it shows a lack of compassion for the situation that we're in. I mean, we don't know. I mean, the government here is changing the rules on COVID-19 weekly. I mean, we really don't know how the season is going to pan out. We could plan to have supporters back in the stadium 2 weeks' time into the season. We could be shut down again and no supporters in the stadium. And to ask people to front that money up for that in the times when people are facing real financial difficulties, I think is important. I think, to be honest with you, why didn't the club just do it on a pay-as-you-pay? Solidify the season ticket holder list and say to them, pay-as-we-play basis. You can pay for your season ticket that way. If you're balloted, you're lucky to get in. You pay on and that's it, and it's up front and done. I just think it's immoral. I agree with everybody else. I think it's our club. We'll always keep on supporting it, whether that's through buying merchandise, going to games, whatever we do. But it doesn't seem as if we're their fans. It just seems as if it's their club. This is what they want out of us. It's all take, and I just think it's immoral.
Okay, thank you for that. Some morally bankrupt, disgrace, press ganging fans into lending money. It's these are people's perceptions, you know. Once again, it wasn't. It didn't have to be this way. I think so. Yet again, it looks like the club have got it wrong, and it's just one thing after another, isn't it? Chalks, on a sort of wider issue here. You know, we've talked about the fact that you know, there's only going to be a maximum of sort of 24,000 fans in the stadium. We're talking about 40%. It could be less than that. I think some clubs have been working on the basis of like 17 to 20%. But even if there's 40%, that equates to sort of 25,000 people in the London stadium. What do you think the future is for supporters? And do you see perhaps football never going back to being the way it was? Or at least, you know, is it just a case that once, you know, we find a vaccine for the coronavirus, that, you know, it's going to be going back to normal?
Firstly, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that you've diverted me off of Gold and Sullivan.
We can come back to that in a second. Let's do this.
We'll come back to them, yeah.
We'll come back to that. You'll get your opportunity, mate.
Oh, I'm gagging for them. I do think, I mean, you know, I come from obviously with the background I've got with the school.
Yeah.
It does look like it's going to be more of a long-term thing.
Yeah.
I think that you know, the social distancing, et cetera, could go on for maybe, I'd say maybe at least 1, possibly 2 years.
Yeah. This is it, isn't it? We don't know. We just don't know. Nobody
we don't know. We don't know. You know, we're looking at what's happened with Spain in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
We've got a Prime Minister that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, but that's another matter. You know, that's a different podcast. I don't know. You're asking me what, you know, in a way you're asking me to tell you what the lottery tickets are.
Well, that'd be nice.
It's going to be tough.
Well, I'll tell you what then. Let's push that to one side, and let's come back to the thing you want to talk about, and that's Sullivan and Gold, and the way they've you know, the way they've pushed this through.
Oh, just bring me on to Sullivan and Gold.
And let's try and keep the expletives to a minimum if we can. I know it's difficult.
I won't say one swear word. Sullivan and Gold. Actually, I better not say anything. Move on, Graham.
Okay, maybe we can come back to that.
Move on.
In a little while. Chalk's clearly not happy with what our owners have done with regards to this matter. DL, your thoughts on this subject? Last one for this particular round. And one thing I wanted to perhaps ask you is there? We were talking about clubs' responsibility a little while ago. Do you think they might have a responsibility to supporters here, and how could they show that? If so, I mean, could perhaps the clubs offer free access to supporters for, you know, a season, or is that just not financially viable? You know, and also, of course, would you be renewing this year?
If I was a season ticket holder,
if you were a season ticket holder, of course.
Yeah, would I renew this year? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm not, so it's easy for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
Give it away for a year? No. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like everything. If there's a service being offered, you know, like every business in the world, you know, they're still charging. And at the end of the day, they've got to make money. They have got to make money. If we want to see better players on the pitch and whatnot else, you know, the club needs to get an income.
Yeah.
The way they've gone about it, I think, is wrong. I'm not too up on it. I've actually, while other people have been talking, I've been zipping through the thread on the forum.
Yeah.
It does leave a bit of taste in your mouth, doesn't it? The way they've gone about it. And I think it was Bristol that said, do it on a pay-as-you-play basis. If you're on the season ticket list, whack down, you know, 100 quid deposit, say, to commit yourself to your seat. And then if you're you come up in the ballot, you pay your pro rata match day rate, rather than people come, because it's easy. It's easy to do that. It's a lot easier to whack out whatever it is, 55 quid or whatever it is for a game.
Yeah.
It is to whack out for the full season ticket and then have to wait for a refund. Interest-free loan. No, I'm not happy about the interest-free loan whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the way they've gone about that, and I've seen the tweet by one of their stooges as well, which I think is absolutely despicable.
It's a disgrace, Nick. It's a disgrace.
It is. It is. So, you know, and they have, again, they've shot themselves in the foot. As Pinky says, they have an open goal where they could do things for the supporters to get a bit of goodwill.
Yeah.
They keep shooting wide. Do you know? And they miss opportunity after opportunity. And all right, it's too late now for them to ever make amends for every single cock up that they've done. But you know, every now and again they could do something just to repair a little bit of damage. You know, a little bit of little sticking plaster, and they still contrive to cock it right up.
Yeah,
because they don't give a shit.
No, it's if it wasn't so sad, it'd actually be laughable. It really would.
Schultz, just quickly on that before we finish the subject. I mean, do you think that is genuinely they don't care, or do you just think they haven't got the right people in place? We had the guy from the BBC whose name escapes me now, who was there as their PR man towards the end of last year. Simon, I think his name, someone. But he was out the door after a matter of weeks. You know, he obviously didn't like the way it was run. I mean, what do you think? You know, because you'd like to think that they do care to some degree. We're talking about an awful lot of money, of course, that they've invested in the club.
They don't. But the thing is, Graham, they don't care.
Yeah,
they don't give a toss.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that there's people that work within the club, within media, within publications, whatever. They're embarrassed by what goes on because they know that these owners, they don't give a toss.
Mm-hmm.
It's sorry, my dog's just wandered in the room and taken me focus. They don't care.
Yeah.
There's an arrogance about them. We've seen it from 10 years ago when they turned up at the club.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so much gold. I'm not so sure. They just don't give a toss about us. You know, they've taken our club. They've ruined the club. I know I'm going back over old ground. They've killed us. And they don't give a toss, and all this stuff that comes out about 10-point plans and all this crap. No, it's no. Sorry, they killed us. Stuff. Sorry, okay. Yeah, sorry, mate. I know I deviated.
No, that's absolutely fine. No, I just wanted to get your opinion because, you know, everyone's opinion is valid, of course. And thank you for keeping the expletives down to a minimum.
I tried.
Yes, of course you can, buddy.
Yeah, right. I think there's two things.
Yep.
I think point number one, they don't have the right people in place.
Yep.
And the reason they don't is because they don't give a toss. You know, it's as simple as that. You know, in what other world or what other industry would our vice chair command a salary in excess of £1 million? What level of competence can she bring to the role and performance that justifies that salary? Because I struggle to see it. If you look at where we are in terms of driving our commercial income, we're miles behind. Sponsorship deals, miles behind. You know, by any metric that a football club would measure their executives' contribution, we're not performing. And the fact that they continue to keep it in that role, seemingly untouchable, and allow her to continue with her paid-for newspaper column, which does, as we evidenced, impact on our ability to sign players, is just all the proof you need that the people that employ her don't care about the supporters, don't really care about the football club, because is there any one of us that thinks long-term their plan is anything other than to sell up at some point and pocket a trouser load of cash? You know, and on the telly at the minute, we've got the Iron Men film. There you go, Channel 117 if you want to watch it. And there he is, Ray Winstone there doing his bit. But, you know, it's a film about this is how great it used to be, commissioned by the people that destroyed what used to be great. And shocking. And all the stuff for the season tickets again, it's an own goal.
Mm-hmm.
They could have done good. They chose to do otherwise. Shocking.
Yes. Yeah, a familiar theme. Thank you, Pinky. Familiar theme from everyone there. And again, it's just, it's the same old story, isn't it? It keeps coming back to the same old thing. But I suppose, to try and be sort of fair on this one, John, of course, has mentioned how David Sullivan, we say they don't care, but it's not specifically the club, of course, but John has revealed how David Sullivan has personally put money into that particular charitable concern. It's not going towards the football club, but I suppose that there is an element there that it's one of those things he didn't have to do. So, but we shall see, of course, how the whole thing develops. The vice chair is, of course, under fire and has been for some time. So far, she's appeared indestructible, but we shall, of course, see how things go in the coming weeks and months, because it's a very, very different world now that football faces going forward. Before we just end that subject, I just want to wrap up quickly on what the two supporters groups who have been involved in the negotiations over the course of the last week have said about the club's policy. WHU ISA released a statement earlier this week in which they said that we took part in a meeting last week with the club, with the meeting focus being to explore the return of fans to the London Stadium. However, we would like to emphasise that most of the details of the ticketing arrangements subsequently released by the club were not discussed at that meeting. The ISA members have concerns about how the balloting system for season tickets will work in practice and asked the club to give more information on how it will work to ensure fairness. For those supporters that are shielding, are over 65 or considered clinically vulnerable, they still have to purchase their full season ticket up front. Of course, this has changed now. With today's announcement, that is slightly different. But they had, we urged the club to rethink this policy. Those shielding and vulnerable are amongst the most long-standing supporters, many of whom have been following the club for more than 50 years. To put this grossly unfair burden on them is not something that the club should be doing. And speaking on behalf of Hammers United, the chairman, Paul Colburn, who was posting on KUMB earlier today, said that Hammers United were left as shocked and disappointed as our members by the statement released by the club regarding season ticket renewals for 2020-21. We have urgently requested an audience with senior stakeholders at the club to ensure our concerns cited last week are reconsidered. At a time when our supporters are undoubtedly going to be impacted by the knock-on effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the club has a social responsibility to ensure that it does the right thing by its supporters whilst balancing its commercial commitments. We will, as always, keep you updated. So I'm sure that particular story has got a long way to go yet. We shall see what happens in due course. And, of course, with the vice chair herself, who, as we said, seems to be under an awful lot of pressure from everywhere at the moment. But moving swiftly on to what is going to be our final subject of the night. It is, of course, the end of the season, and at the end of the season, as we have done for each and every one of the last 23 years, 23 years, God, where's that time gone? We hold the KUMB Awards in which we ask our readers to vote on a series of polls such as best player, best young player, worst player, best signing, worst signing, Hackett of the Year, which is always a fun one. And one of the other categories that we ask you all to vote in is your most memorable moment of the season. There haven't been, as we've already established tonight, there haven't been an awful lot of highlights over the course of the last, 11 months, or for however long the season has gone on. But I thought we'd end tonight by going around the panel and just asking for your most memorable moment. It doesn't have to be a positive one. It could be something, that's not particularly fun or enjoyable, but, it generally is. So I'm going to start with our special guest tonight. I'll come to you, John. What was your most memorable moment of the 2019-20 season?
Played Manchester United at home, Cresswell's goal. It was one of the few games I missed. We were having a family event in the south of France. We had this bar. The United crowd were in there. My family had claret and blue shirts, and that free kick, that was incredible. We took over the bar that day, and that was probably one of the favourite memory. Downside, Roberto at Burnley. My goodness, that that flap that ended up going under the crossbar over his head was incredible.
Sunday League football at its best on a
Oh my
Premier League
goodness!
stage.
Yeah,
Was
I
it
was
not?
so close to it. I could not believe what I was seeing. But yeah, that's the worst moment for me.
Thanks, John. DL, your most memorable moment of the 2019-20 season, please.
My most memorable moment, very personal to me, was my little one's first game, the 4-0 win at Bournemouth, against Bournemouth. Somebody very, very kindly on the day gave me tickets for hospitality. So we went up there. He got his photo taken with Anton Ferdinand and Jack Wilshere. And yeah, just seeing the look on his face when each time one of those 4 goals went in, absolutely priceless. Never forget it. And the poor bugger's up there. So,
well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about the kids getting over there and enjoying themselves. We all felt that at one stage before we all became a bit deflated and, you know, and old and and disappointed with the way everything is run. Chalks, your most memorable, thanks, DL. Chalks, your most memorable moment of the last year or so.
Not too politically correct, but Palace away on, was it Boxing Day?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was Boxing Day, yeah. Half time, and the little Palace mascot's taking the penalties. And this little Palace supporter must have been about 5 and missed his penalty. And he ran over to the West Ham, even though he'd missed. And he had 3,000 West Ham fans singing, "You're fucking shit." That was my moment of the season, because the rest of the season has been absolutely shit. But it was a beautiful moment.
I suppose he probably had the last laugh, seeing as they won in the last minute, didn't they? Jordan Ayew grabbing the winner.
He did have the last laugh, but that moment in time, he burst out crying, which made it even better. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Having a rise out of small children, whatever next, I don't know. This is how bad the season has been. That's what it's come to. Yeah. Thanks, Chalks. Thank you. Pinky, your most memorable moment from the 2019-20 season?
Yeah, easy one really. Chelsea away, the David Martin debut. You know, it's the context of it. You know, previous 6 games had picked up a single point. We'd seen the Roberto chucking the ball in the net away at Burnley. We'd seen the home defeat to Tottenham Hotspur in the previous game. You know, we were desperate by that stage. We went to the training ground keeper, David Martin. See what you can do, son. He kept a clean sheet. I mean, in fairness, he didn't have an awful lot to do. We won the game. I think Cresswell got the goal. And you know, the reaction afterwards of his old man, Alvin, club legend. 596 appearances for the mighty and famous West Ham United. But one thing's for sure, his son will be fondly remembered for his debut, pretty much as Alvin was for his nearly 600 games. Great day for the pair of them. Great reaction afterwards from Alvin and David. Brilliant stuff. Proper West Ham. Only highlight of the season for me. The only one.
I don't think you would have to be a West Ham fan to be moved by that picture of the father and son embracing in the stands at the end of that game. I think tears were shed by more than a few on that day. It was Saturday the 30th of November, according to my records. Aaron Cresswell scoring the only goal of the game in the 48th minute. And as you say, David Martin making some vital saves, not too many, interestingly, but did what he had to do. As we always say, you can only beat what's in front of you, right?
And the thing is, Graham, David Martin's not a pub player. He's had 400 games as a professional footballer.
Yep.
He's been in Liverpool's Champions League squad twice. But the only game he will be remembered for by our supporters will be that game. Hats off to the lad. Good for him.
Yeah, I suppose it echoes really of Jimmy Walker, who, of course, he'll also be remembered, I think, for the playoff final against Preston when he, did his cruise ship. But of course, his biggest moment was also at Stamford Bridge, another keeper, saving Frank Lampard's penalty that night to the absolute delight of the West Ham fans who were situated behind the goal on that particular
We enjoyed
occasion.
that.
But thank you, Pinky. Rio, over to you. Your most memorable moment from the last season.
Yeah, I was going to go exactly the same as Pinky. David, Martin and Alvin in the stands embracing each other. That brought an absolute tear to my eye. So as soon as Pinky's nicked it, I'm going to go with Andrei Yarmolenko's celebration after he scored against Norwich.
Oh, that's a belter. Great
when
shout.
He covered more ground in a run into the stand celebrating with the physio than he's done all season. Absolute quality. I like a bit of emotion, me.
Yeah, you probably picked the two most emotional moments of the season there. I guess, of course, Yarmolenko. Who was it against, Rio? What was the game?
I'm sure it was Norwich.
It was Norwich City. 31st of August, we beat them 2. Of course, Hilaire scored. Yep. Remember when that used to happen? Hilaire scored the opening goal in the 24th minute, and Yarmolenko grabbing that all-important second and emotional one after 56 minutes to give us a 2-0 win. The first of 2 wins against Norwich, which I suppose you could say kept us up. But yeah, it was a brilliant moment. A very, very good shout. Last but not least, Briz, over to you. What's your nomination? What gets your nomination this year?
I think the highlight for me this year has seen Ben Johnson come through and play at the back and look like he's been there forever. The guys play really, really well. It's always brilliant to see someone from our academy come up and make the first team. It just reminds everybody that, you know, they've got a shot. No matter who you are, where you're from, you've got a shot at being a professional footballer. I think if I was going to go for a Hackett of the year, it'd have to be VAR, which I think has kind of just ruined the game this year. And God help us if it goes on next season doing the same. But yeah, that's it for me, really.
Good stuff. Thank you, gentlemen. For my part, I think it would be one on the field and one off the field. I think on the field, it's impossible really to look further than that moment that Pinky referred to with David and Alvin Martin. Incredible moment and something that I certainly welled up at, as I'm sure many of you out there did. As for off the pitch, on a very, very personal level, I think it would have to be the Hammers United protest when I was very proud and honoured to be asked to speak to a couple of thousand West Ham fans, and I've never been as frightened in all my life as when I stood upon that hill and looked down to see swathes of big, scary West Ham supporters waiting for me to talk to them. But that not just that, but the whole protest marches, I think, especially the second one where we walked along the Greenway and there was over 8,000 people there, an incredible achievement by Hammers United to put that together and do something that I think lots of supporters groups have tried to do over the years, but have just never been able to achieve. So that really incredible achievement. Of course, it is still ongoing. We wait to see what happens next. I'm sure there would have been further protests had the COVID-19 break not began in March, but as it is, we are where we are. I appear to have frozen, so I'm not quite sure where I am right now. I don't know if I'm back, but yeah, there we go. There we go. The broadband failing us at the end of the show. But that is it for now, everybody. That is the end of the show. Slightly longer once again than we had hoped to go on for. But I hope we have kept you entertained for the last hour and 40 minutes or so. Some good stuff out there tonight. We shall, of course, be back next week for another Mod Pod with another very special guest. For now, I would like to say thank you to everyone on the KUMB team for joining me tonight. That's Pink Palermo, Rio, Chalks, Bristol Hammer and DL. Thank you all, gentlemen. Great to have you back once again. And of course, a very special thank you to our very special guest, Mr. John Ratomski of the Irons Supporting Foodbanks.
Cheers, Brian.
And John, wish you the very best of luck with that going forward. And here's hoping we can continue to raise funds for the Gnome Food Bank and all those other very, very important schemes, such as the one that Chalks mentioned. Once more, before we go, can you please tell people how they can get involved and how they may donate to that?
Yeah, Gnome Food Banks are always grateful for donations. It's www.give.net/Newham_Food Bank. We're 63% of their target, which even now is, pre-COVID anyway, but every bit helps. And we have got more fundraisers planned. But we're grateful for your support, guys. KUMB, the other forums, Hammers Chat, help us out, West Ham Fan TV, and so on. And the club equally. I've got to say thanks to them for the backing that they've given us. And the whole thing revolves around West Ham fans. We are a special breed. The East End and West Ham community, everybody knew that from the days when West Ham were everybody's second team. And we're a special breed, and the local community is digging in, as far as it goes to East Essex and so on further north. We're very, very grateful for the support we've had from the West Ham fan family, I would say. Thank you.
Brilliant. Perfect way to end the show, really.
Well said, John. Well
thanks,
said.
John. And
Thank you.
once again, all power to you for everything you do, and keep up the very, very good and important work there with the project. That is it for tonight. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and watching the latest episode of the Mod Pod. You can, of course, get in touch with us via our new email address, which is modpod@kumb.com. Modpod, all one word, @kumb.com. And you can get in touch with us on the KUMB forum, which is at kumb.com/forum. You can even get in touch with John, because he's regularly posting on there too. If you want to ever ask John anything about Irons Supporting Foodbanks, I'm sure he'll be delighted to answer your questions on there. That is it for tonight. Nothing else to say, really, apart from come on, you Irons.
Come on, you Irons.
On your irons.
Come on, you
Sort of put it on there. Come on, you Irons.